St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Parish was canonically erected on June 27, 1975, and legally incorporated on July 24, 1975. Founding pastor, Reverend Kenneth Menge, led the church for the next 12 years. Reverend James Walter was an associate pastor for 6 years. The first Mass of Thanksgiving was held on September 14, 1975, the day that St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, the first American saint, was canonized. Elizabeth Ann Seton was born in 1774 as Elizabeth Ann Bailey in New York City. She was brought up as an Episcopalian and married William Seton at the age of 19 in 1794. She went on missions of mercy to help poor widows and children in New York City with her sister-in-law Rebecca, and earned the nickname Protestant Sisters of Charity. Her husband contracted tuberculosis in 1803, and the couple sailed to Italy so he could recuperate. William Seton died several months later in Pisa. After his death, her husband's friends took Elizabeth in and introduced her to Catholicism. Upon returning to New York, she joined the Catholic Church. Elizabeth and her 5 children later moved to Maryland, where she opened a school for girls. She formed a community based on the Sisters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul of France. The rule was officially adopted, and the Sisters of Charity became the first congregation of women religious in America. She worked to establish St. Joseph Academy, a school for indigent children in Emmitsburg, Maryland, and was named Superior. In the remaining years of her life, Mother Seton and the sisters worked with much effort to teach children and establish orphanages, including one in New York. Through their love of Christ, they brought education to the poor and set the groundwork for the parochial school system in the United States. On September 22, 1975, a special papal blessing from Pope Paul VI was bestowed on the congregation by Bishop Head. There was still much sadness because Sacred Heart Church, 117 years in existence, was sold to the city and would be demolished for the sake of progress. The result of the merger led some Sacred Heart parishioners to join other parishes, but the newly formed parish had 1,500 families. On October 2nd, the parish women united St. Anne's Guild and St. Mary's Guild and became St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Guild. The former Sacred Heart parishioners gradually became involved in parish activities. Over the next few years, they continued to serve as trustees and members of the parish council. Ultimately, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton had become one of the largest parishes in the county. On December 29, 1975, the parish council voted to renovate the church and construct a new rectory and administrative building behind the 1860-built monastery that formerly housed the Passionist seminarians. This project would cost $791,000 and would be done in 2 phases. The plan was to demolish the monastery after construction of the rectory was completed. Arthur Kaiser was the general chairman of the Building Fund campaign. Work began in November of 1976, and on May 24, 1977, the priest moved into the new rectory. Earlier, the same year, the miraculous picture of Our Lady of Perpetual Help was brought from Sacred Heart Church and enthroned at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. The renovations were completed, and the church was rededicated on October 26, 1977. The interior renovations included new concept lighting, the first such design for any church in the world, repainting the church off-white with the back walls of the sanctuary a soft coral, placement of an ornamental screen resembling a rosette from a distance, but distinct angel figures make up the rosette when viewed at a closer distance, designed by Visions in Design of Tonawanda.
Also called reredos, they were designed by Theodore Nemec, and detail carving was done by Richard Carroll, sculptor. Beneath the rosette stood a statue of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton with her hands resting on the shoulders of a boy and girl holding school books. A new oak altar was installed with a first-class relic of the patron saint enshrined in the altar by Father James Walter. New celebrants' chairs with orange velvet cushions were designed and built by Vision and Design. The Stations of the Cross were redone by sculptor Richard Carroll with off-white paint and gold detailing. A new statue of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and a new tabernacle were placed in the niche to the right of the sanctuary. The figure of the Blessed Mother looks down on the baptismal font in the niche to the left of the sanctuary. A Spanish treasure installed by the Rambush Company of New Jersey in an earlier remodeling of St. Mary's Church, the grille and wooden carving dating to the 15th century, originally from the convent of St. Teresa of Avila, proudly stood in the right wall of the sanctuary. By May of 1978, a new aluminum steeple and cross were in place. Meister Contracting of Dunkirk was the general contractor for the renovation project. Father James Walter, associate pastor for 7 years, left St. Elizabeth Ann Seton in 1978. Father Tim Kelly was appointed associate pastor. He would be followed by Father Dennis Mende, Father Timothy Kester, Father Joseph Gullo, and Father Robert Hora. In August of 1979, the organ from Sacred Heart Church was installed in the church. That same year, Father Menge was honored on the occasion of his Silver Jubilee. In June of 1980, several youth groups presented the parish with a gold tray and 6 chalices. In September, Bishop Head celebrated Mass on the 5th anniversary of the founding of the parish. Catholic education was important to the new parish, and many changes took place. St. Mary's School had been sold to the Dunkirk Urban Renewal in 1970 for $240,000 and leased back to the parish for $1 a year. A provision in the lease allowed the church to be able to buy back the building. After the merger with Sacred Heart, the parish changed the name to St. Elizabeth Ann Seton School, and renovations began to the wiring, lighting, and sprinkler system. It was reopened in 1975 under Principal Sister Robert Ann. In 1976, Mayor Snyder proposed a swap of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton School building and Sacred Heart Church. Ultimately, the church bought back the building for $224,000, and the ownership returned to the church. St. Elizabeth Ann Seton School was closed in 1989 when a new regional Northern Chautauqua Catholic school was started at Holy Trinity, and students attended there. The stone grotto and the rectory yard was built by the Passionists to honor the Blessed Mother. It was started in 1914 and completed in 1960. In May of 1977, the parish CYO undertook a service project to refurbish the grotto, and the project was completed in 1978. For many years, there was a crowning ceremony held there every year in May to honor the Blessed Mother. In July of 2012, Martin Gallagher, our summer seminarian intern, would again put much labor and love into clearing the vines from the grotto near the school building. In March of 1981, Father Menge was elevated to the rank of Monsignor by Pope John Paul II. Monsignor Menge continued as our pastor. These years were productive ones with many changes. The most important was the spiritual growth of the congregation, made possible by founding Pastor Menge, former Pastor Thomas Wapper, and our present pastor, Father Dennis Ryder. Young men from the parish entered the seminary, were ordained, and offered their first masses at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. Among them were Reverend Richard Burke, Reverend Mark Ward, Reverend Chester Goronsky, Reverend Carl Loeb, and Reverend Edward Youngquist. Others have gone on to become permanent deacons, including Moises Cruz and Jose Ruiz. In the fall of 1987, word was received that Monsignor Menge would be transferred and a new pastor would be assigned. Monsignor Menge left in 1988 to become pastor of St. John the Baptist Church in Tonawanda. On January 26, 1998, he died after a battle with cancer at the age of 69.